The White House thrummed like a vibrant beehive on the brink of the state reception, a stage where handshakes, glances, and even the menu would communicate diplomatic signals amid escalating trade strains. Japan and Germany, two powerhouses, awaited a remarkable evening, and for Karoline Leavitt, White House spokesperson, the culinary choices transcended simple nourishment. They embodied a declaration of national strength. In the strategy room, she rhythmically tapped her pen against the table, her sharp gaze sweeping over the organizing team. Foie gras, an exquisite delicacy, a symbol of elegance, would leave our guests awestruck. And we will prove America is not simply strong, it knows how to dazzle. Yet in the White House basement, where the kitchen's heat mingled with the relentless rhythm of chopping blades, a silent bombshell had exploded. Before delving into the story, share your viewing location and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss upcoming stories. Marcus Elwood, acclaimed chef with a philosophy of sustainable cuisine, stunned the team when he declared, "I won't prepare foie gras." He spoke clearly, his voice calm yet uncompromising. "Force-feeding geese for their livers is inhumane. I've witnessed it firsthand, and I cannot turn a blind eye." The kitchen fell silent. Whispers spread among the pots and pans. Several knives paused mid-mationer. They sensed a storm approaching. Upstairs, Aidan Walsh, Leavitt's trusted aide, knocked softly on her office door, his voice hesitant. "Ma'am, there's a problem with the menu. Chef Marcus Elwood refuses to make foie gras." Leavitt froze, her eyes sharp as diamonds cutting glass. She met his gaze, her voice colder than steel. "He refuses? I'm hosting a state dinner for world leaders. Get me to the kitchen now." Dressed in a striking red dress, Leavitt strode swiftly through the West Wing. Her high heels clicked sharply on the marble floor. Aidan scrambled behind, eyes glued to his iPad, attempting to keep pace with her directives. The pressure of the dinner weighed on everyone. Each dish would be scrutinized like a speech. For Leavitt, this wasn't just a meal. It was a battlefield of optics, a global stage, and any misstep, even a single dish, could cost America points. In a small meeting room, Leavitt stood before the communications team, hands on hips, her voice cutting like glass. "The menu must be flawless. We're hosting leaders from Tokyo and Berlin, people accustomed to extravagance. Foie gras is the centerpiece, the dish they'll discuss when they depart. It says America isn't just powerful, it's sophisticated." The staff nodded, but Aidan hesitated, sweat beading on his forehead. "Ms. Leavitt, I checked with the kitchen team. Marcus Elwood, he's adamant about not making it. He says it's a matter of ethics." Silence enveloped the room. Leavitt tilted her head, a cold smile flickering. "Ethics? Does he think he's running a charity? This is the White House, not an animal rights organization." She tapped her finger lightly on the table, her mind racing like a strategist. "Aidan, you understand the stakes of this dinner. If we fail, the press will devastate us, and I won't let a chef ruin this for us." "In the image we're building," Aidan nodded, his voice trembling. "I've asked the kitchen team to reconsider, but Marcus is stubborn. He says he's prepared alternatives. Something about Wagyu beef and scallops." Leavitt raised an eyebrow, her eyes flashing with skepticism. "Alternatives? I don't need substitutes. I need the dish that makes diplomats gasp." He doesn't grasp that this isn't just food. It's a message. She turned to the communications team, her voice lowering, resolute. "We're telling the story of an America that leads. Every detail, from the tablecloths to the dessert, must reinforce that." Leavitt ordered Aidan to monitor the kitchen team closely, demanding reports on every step. "I want to know everything Marcus does, from how he chops onions to what plates he picks. If he won't cooperate, we'll find someone else. No one is irreplaceable." Aidan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her command. He knew Leavitt didn't make empty threats. She turned words into action with the precision of a communications strategist. Meanwhile, Leavitt stepped onto a small balcony, breathing in the cool air, her mind still churning. She imagined the headlines if the dinner flopped. White House fumbles before global leaders. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Marcus Elwood might be a talented chef, but he didn't understand the bigger game, the one she'd mastered. She smoothed her hair, her gaze resolute. If he wants to play hardball, I'll show him what hardball looks like, she muttered, turning back to the hallway, her steps purposeful toward the kitchen. The communications team, still in the meeting room, exchanged anxious glances. One staffer whispered, "She won't back down. Marcus is digging his own grave." Aiden, still clutching his iPad, felt the pressure bearing down. The White House kitchen door swung open, its hinges creaking, cutting through the lively rhythm inside. Karoline Leavitt stormed in, her presence commanding in a fitted red dress, her piercing gaze sweeping the space. Aiden Walsh, her aide, followed quietly, gripping his iPad like a shield. The heat from the ovens mixed with the aroma of roasted garlic and thyme, creating a thick atmosphere. The sound of knives on cutting boards, sizzling pans, and the kitchen team's murmurs stopped abruptly as Leavitt appeared. Marcus Elwood, standing by a stainless steel counter, was inspecting a tray of fresh scallops when he looked up at the sound of high heels clacking on the tiled floor. Lena Martinez, the sous chef, with her hair neatly tied back, stopped stirring a pot of stock, her anxious gaze darting toward Marcus. Terrence Brooks, a young line cook clutching a basket of cilantro, whispered to Carl, the veteran chef, "Man, this is about to explode." Carl, his face etched with wrinkles, sighed and muttered, "I warned him not to cross her." Lena stopped, arms crossed, her eyes locking onto Marcus like a hunter zeroing in on prey. "Marcus Elwood," she began, her voice low and sharp, each word honed to a point. "I've been told you disagree with my menu. I want to hear why, and I want to hear it." Now her voice echoed, drowning out the soft simmer of boiling water, plunging the kitchen into silence. Marcus set the scallops down slowly, wiping his hands on his apron, his gaze calm, but resolute. He stepped forward, facing Leavitt without flinching. "Miss Leavitt, I can't make foie gras. It's produced by force-feeding geese and ducks, a process that's painful and cruel. I've witnessed it firsthand, and I can't be part of it, regardless of who it's for." His voice was steady, a declaration forged from years of conviction. Leavitt tilted her head, her lips curling into a thin smile, yet her eyes sparked with fire. "Cruel? You're standing in a kitchen serving world leaders and you want to debate how geese are raised? This is the White House, Marcus, not an animal rights forum. I need a dish that dazzles them, and foie gras is non-negotiable." She stepped closer, her heels clicking in a steady rhythm, like war drums signaling battle. Marcus held his ground, his eyes never leaving Leavitt's. "I understand the importance of this dinner, but I have limits. I visited a farm in France and witnessed geese caged so tightly they couldn't move, metal tubes shoved down their throats to force-feed them. They could barely breathe. I cannot serve that dish, even for diplomats." He gestured toward the counter, where fresh ingredients were meticulously arranged, but it was also ironic that the man who had dragged the entire crew to the underground bar in Montana would end up peppering his ranch ingredients with critiques of Mausians, which were, of course, the finest in the world, because these dishes will be memorable. Lena, by the stock pot, gave a subtle nod, though her eyes remained fraught with worry. Carl shook his head, muttering, "He's getting himself in deep." Terrence, still holding the cilantro, stared wide-eyed, unable to believe Marcus was standing his ground so boldly. Lena took another step, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Wagyu scallops? You think I'm hosting this dinner to serve coastal bistro fare? These leaders expect opulence, not the menu of a self-righteous chef." Marcus took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not being self-righteous, Miss Leavitt. I'm doing what's correct. The dishes I'm suggesting aren't just delicious, they tell a story of an America that leads in quality and responsibility. I served Wagyu to ambassadors at a New York event and they couldn't stop raving. The scallops had a governor requesting to meet the chef. I know they'll succeed." He paused, his voice lowering. "I'm not refusing to make things difficult. I'm refusing because I believe in what I do." Leavitt crossed her arms, her eyes flashing with irritation mixed with curiosity. "You're very confident, Marcus, but confidence isn't adequate. If the guests aren't impressed, if they leave underwhelmed, you'll pay the price. I don't tolerate failure, and I don't forgive defiance." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a final warning. You're making a big wager. Are you certain you want to continue? Marcus stood tall, unshaken. I'm certain, Miss Leavitt. I'd rather lose this position than do something against my conscience. But I promise you the dishes I prepare will make this dinner legendary. He met her gaze, his eyes like tempered steel, unyielding. The kitchen air grew heavy, steam from the pots rising like a thin mist. Lena bit her lip, gripping the ladle tightly, worried for Marcus but quietly admiring his courage. Terence whispered to Carl, "He's not backing off. Never seen anyone talk to her like that." Carl, though exasperated, couldn't deny Marcus's resolve. Aidan, standing behind Leavitt, scribbled notes frantically, sweat beading on his forehead. Leavitt drew a long breath, her eyes scanning the kitchen as if calculating her next move. "Fine, Marcus," she said, her voice icy. "I'll give you one chance, but if I return and you still don't deliver, I'll ensure you're out of this kitchen." She turned on her heel, her red dress sweeping like a flame, Aidan hurrying after her. The kitchen door swung shut, leaving behind a heavy silence. The kitchen team exhaled, but no one dared speak immediately. Lena stepped forward, lightly touching Marcus's shoulder. "You all right? She's not someone to trifle with." Marcus nodded, picking up his knife, his focus unbroken. "I'm fine, but we need to be better than flawless." Terence gave a nervous laugh, setting down the cilantro basket. "No pressure, right?" Carl, for the first time, looked at Marcus with a hint of respect, though he still grumbled, "He's insane." Marcus began assigning tasks, his voice calm but firm. He inspected every ingredient, from the vibrant red wagyu to the glistening scallops. In his mind, he envisioned the finished dishes, not just to please diplomats, but to prove his principles could create miracles. The kitchen slowly regained its rhythm after the storm named Karoline Leavitt, but the air remained heavy like gathering storm clouds. Marcus Elwood stood at the stainless steel counter, his hands gliding over the wagyu beef, examining its fine white marbling like an ink-wash painting. The overhead lights glinted off the knife he held, but his mind was elsewhere. A Vermont farm where he'd once run through grassy fields, learning to respect every living creature. Lena Martinez by the stove stirred a pot of stock, her eyes repeatedly flicking toward Marcus, as if wanting to speak something but hesitating. Terence Brooks, rinsing scallops under the faucet, tried to break the silence with an awkward joke. "Well, at least we still have jobs for now." No one laughed. Carl, the veteran chef with salt and pepper hair, couldn't stay calm any longer. He strode over, his voice low and sharp, pointing at Marcus. "Who do you think you are, huh? Some knight crusading for geese? We work for the White House, not a charity. You just jeopardized the whole team for your so-called principles." He slammed his hand on the counter, making a spice tray rattle. "Liv doesn't play games. If this dinner fails, you're not the only one losing employment." Marcus paused, setting his knife down, his gaze meeting Carl's without hostility. "I understand your concern, Carl, but I'm not doing this to cause trouble. I'm doing it because I believe we can create an incredible dinner without causing harm." His voice was low, each word carrying the weight of sincerity. "We have wagyu scallops, dishes that tell a story of American quality. Don't you want to do something worth being proud of?" Carl snorted, crossing his arms. "Proud? I want to maintain this job, Marcus. I've got a family, bills to settle. You're young, you can take chances, I can't." He turned away, retreating to his corner of the kitchen, muttering about idealists. Lena, unable to stay silent, stepped closer to Marcus, her voice quiet but firm. "Carl's partly correct, Marcus. Leavitt's not one to forgive, but I'm with you. It's just, I'm afraid this will go too far." She paused, her eyes revealing inner conflict. "My family lost land because of decisions from people up top. I understand the kind of pressure someone like her can bring." Marcus looked at Lena, his expression softening. "I know, Lena, and I don't want anyone on this team to suffer consequences. But if we yield, we lose what makes us different." He turned back to the counter, picking up a scallop, his fingers tracing its shimmering shell. In that moment his mind drifted to Vermont, where his stern farmer grandfather had taught him that every animal deserved respect. "When I was 12, he said, his voice low like he was sharing a secret, "my grandfather took me to the cattle barn and showed me how to care for them. You're not just raising them for meat. You're raising them to live well. That transformed me. Lena nodded, her gaze softening. I understand it, but not everyone sees it like you, Marcus. Carl just wants security and Terrence. She glanced at Terrence, who was pretending to be occupied with the scallops. He admires you, but he's scared. We're all scared. Marcus gave a faint smile, the first of the day. I'm scared too, Lena, but I'm more afraid of losing who I am than losing this position. Terrence, overhearing, jumped in with a mix of enthusiasm and nerves. Hey boss, I believe in you. I mean, that Wagyu looks killer, but what if Leavitt returns? She looked at me like she'd devour me alive. He gave an awkward laugh, trying to mask his tension. Marcus clapped Terrence's shoulder, his voice reassuring. She'll return, and when she does, we'll demonstrate we're right. You just do your part, I'll handle the remainder. Suddenly, Aiden pushed through the door, his eyes more anxious than before. Marcus, I just talked to Miss Leavitt. She's not pleased. She said if you don't change your mind, she's considering replacing the head chef. She wants me to report everything you do. He paused, glancing around the kitchen team. I don't want to cause problems, but she's dead serious. Carl spun around, his eyes blazing. See? I warned you. You're dragging us all down, Marcus. Marcus took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over the team. Aiden, thanks for the warning, but I'm not changing. We'll do the Wagyu and scallops and they'll leave the guests amazed. Carl, if you don't want in, I respect that, but I need this team united. He looked at Lena and Terrence, his voice firm. We can accomplish this, not just for the dinner, but for who we are. Lena nodded, clenching her fist. I'm with you, Marcus. Terrence shrugged, his smile brighter. Yeah, I'm in too. Scallops trump foie gras any day, right? Carl, still irritated, remained silent, his expression softening slightly as if reconsidering. Aiden, sensing Marcus's resolve, stepped back, muttering, I'll report, but good luck. The kitchen's overhead lights cast a white glow, highlighting droplets on the fresh scallops Marcus Elwood was inspecting. After the storm of the confrontation with Karoline Leavitt and internal tensions, the kitchen now hummed with a new rhythm, not quite calm but charged with determination. Marcus stood at the crossroads, knowing each decision from here would shape not just the dinner, but his reputation. Lena Martinez, nearby, finally chopped time, her eyes now steadier as if Marcus' resolve had spread. Terrence Brooks, marinating Wagyu beef, hummed an upbeat tune, trying to dispel the pressure. Only Carl, in the far corner, quietly diced onions, his gaze wavering between doubt and resignation. Marcus set a scallop down, turning to Lena, his voice low but warm. Lena, I need you on the citrus sauce for the scallops. Precise ratios. A touch of acidity to elevate the natural sweetness. Lena nodded, flashing a slight smile. Got it, boss. I'll make it impeccable. But then she lowered her voice, her eyes betraying worry. Do you think we'll convince Leavitt? She doesn't seem like someone who yields. Marcus met her gaze, his eyes glinting with confidence. We don't need to persuade her with words. We'll do it with the food. When the guests taste the Wagyu and scallops, they'll know we're correct. Terrence, overhearing, jumped in with youthful enthusiasm. Exactly. I bet this Wagyu will make them forget foie gras. I mean, look at this marbling. It's like a masterpiece. He held up a slice, the surface shimmering under the light. Marcus chuckled, clapping Terrence's shoulder. Precisely, Terrence, but art needs technique. Make sure the marinade's even, not overly salty. Terrence nodded eagerly, diving back into his task with fresh energy. Unexpectedly, Carl spoke from the corner, his voice gruff but less hostile. Marcus, I still think you're crazy for taking on Leavitt, but if you're determined on this path, I won't let the team collapse. He paused, meeting Marcus's eyes. Just tell me what I need to accomplish. Marcus nodded, his gaze appreciative. Thanks, Carl. I need you to monitor the oven temp for the Wagyu. Exactly 200 deg, no fluctuations. You're the best for this. Carl gave a soft grunt, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward as if Marcus's acknowledgement had eased some tension. As the kitchen team began working in sync, Marcus moved to the prep area, inspecting each ingredient like a conductor leading an orchestra. He lifted a piece of wagyu, his fingers tracing its silky fat, envisioning it melting in a hot pan, releasing rich aromas. He recalled a night in San Francisco when he'd declined a Michelin-starred restaurant position because they insisted on using foie gras. "I told them," he shared with Lena, his voice low, like storytelling, "I'd rather create simple, clean food than luxurious dishes with blood on my hands." Lena looked up, her eyes full of admiration. "And now you're here in the White House kitchen, still holding that stance. Not many could do that, Marcus." Before Marcus could respond, Aidan Walsh pushed through the door, his face more strained than ever. "Marcus, I just came from the meeting room. Leavitt demands a progress report immediately. She says if the menu doesn't meet expectations, she'll replace the entire kitchen team, not just you." He glanced around, his voice shaky. "I'm just conveying it, but she's dead serious." Terrence stopped humming, his hand freezing on the wagyu. Lena frowned, her eyes flicking to Marcus, awaiting his reaction. Marcus took a deep breath, setting the meat down, his gaze steady. "Thanks, Aidan. Tell Leavitt we're working, and when the food hits the table she'll see no one needs replacing." Aidan nodded, but his eyes remained anxious as he left. Carl, overhearing, shook his head. "Kid's got guts, but if this fails, Marcus—" "Don't say I didn't caution you." Marcus turned to Carl, his voice resolute. "There won't be a failure, Carl, not when we're doing it properly." Marcus rallied the team, his voice ringing like a call to arms. "Listen up, everyone. We have wagyu from a Montana ranch where cattle are grass-fed, no chemicals. We have Atlantic scallops, sustainably caught. These dishes aren't just delightful, they're a story of an America we can be proud of. We'll make them perfect, not just for the diplomats, but for ourselves." Lena nodded, her eyes blazing. Terrence raised a fist, cheering softly. "Let's execute this." Carl, though reluctant, nodded too, checking the oven with rare focus. The kitchen surged with new energy, each person diving into their tasks with precision and passion. Marcus moved between stations, adjusting seasonings and monitoring temperatures, his eyes alight like an artist before a grand canvas. He knew Leavitt's pressure still loomed, but he also knew every slice of wagyu, every scallop was a chance to prove his principles weren't obstacles but strengths. As the ovens warmed, the kitchen pulsed with a promise of triumph. Not just on the dining table, but in the team's heart. Marcus Elwood stood at the center, his gaze focused, directing the kitchen crew with a general's precision. Lena Martinez meticulously prepared the citrus sauce, its bright aroma mingling with the scent of wagyu beef. Terrence Brooks was test searing, while Carl at the oven corner adjusted the temperature with rare care. His eyes now less doubtful, replaced by quiet commitment. But the fragile harmony shattered when the kitchen door swung open, bringing a cold draft and Karoline Leavitt's imposing presence. Leavitt strode in, her high heels clicking sharply on the floor, her red dress blazing like an unquenchable flame. Aidan Walsh trailed close behind, clutching his iPad, his face taut like a messenger before battle. The team froze, eyes darting to Marcus. Lena bit her lip. Gripping a spice jar tightly, Terrence, still holding a pan, whispered, "Oh, Carl." "Here we go again." Carl grunted softly, but didn't look away from the oven. "Leave it." He stopped. Her gaze locked onto Marcus, her voice sharp yet tinged with fresh curiosity. "Marcus Elwood? I've given you time. Now I require your final answer. Are you still refusing to make foie gras, or do I need to find someone else to accomplish the job?" She crossed her arms, the overhead lights glinting off her silver earrings, highlighting her unshakable confidence. Marcus sat down the wagyu he was inspecting, wiped his hands on his apron, and stepped forward, his eyes burning with undiminished resolve. "Miss Leavitt, I'm not altering my stance. Foie gras doesn't belong on this table. Not because I want to defy you, but because I believe we can execute better." He gestured to the prep table where scallops and wagyu were arranged like works of art. "I've prepared two alternatives: wagyu beef from a sustainable Montana ranch and fresh Atlantic scallops. They're not just dishes, they're a statement of American excellence and responsibility. Flight attendant Emily von Sanders, livid, raised an eyebrow, her eyes scanning the table of ingredients. But her voice remained icy. You speak eloquently, Marcus, but I don't need poetry. I need assurance that Japan's and Germany's leaders leave here in awe. You think some scallops and beef can match foie gras, a dish the world recognizes as the pinnacle? She stepped closer, her gaze challenging. Give me a reason not to dismiss you right now. Marcus took a deep breath, his voice low but compelling. Let me tell you about this Wagyu. It comes from a Montana ranch where cattle graze on natural pastures. No hormones, no cramped pens. When seared, it melts, delivering a rich flavor that needs no tricks. I served this to a European delegation last year, and they begged for the recipe. He moved to the tray of scallops, his fingers tracing their shimmering shells. These scallops, sustainably caught, seared with a light citrus sauce. A governor once called them the finest thing he'd ever tasted. These dishes don't just satisfy, they tell a story of an America leading with quality and ethics. Leavitt behind him gave a subtle nod, her eyes glowing with renewed faith. Terence, despite his nerves, couldn't suppress a grin hearing Marcus speak. Carl, at the oven, paused his adjustments, his eyes showing appreciation for the first time. Leavitt, though still stone-faced, seemed drawn in by Marcus's words. She stepped to the table, her fingers lightly brushing the Wagyu, her gaze wavering between doubt and intrigue. You talk like it's magic, Marcus, but what if the guests don't concur? If they leave thinking we economized without foie gras, who takes the fall? Marcus met her eyes unflinching. I'll take the responsibility, Miss Leavitt. If these dishes don't amaze them, you can fire me. But I know they'll triumph. I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never failed when I believed in what I execute. He paused, his voice softening, almost earnest. You want a dinner that grabs the world's attention? Let me do it my way, and I guarantee they won't just eat, they'll remember. The air seemed to freeze, broken only by the faint sizzle from Terran's test pan. Aiden, behind, stopped typing on his iPad, his eyes flickering with astonishment. Lee drew a long breath, her gaze sweeping the team as if weighing a final move. After a long moment, she nodded slowly, her voice softer but still edged with warning. All right, Marcus, I'll grant you this shot, but if your Wagyu or scallops don't deliver as promised, I'll ensure you're out of this kitchen and your team with you. She pointed at Lena, Terrence, and Carl, her eyes like arrows. Marcus nodded, his gaze steady on Leavitt. You won't be disappointed, Ms. Litt. I guarantee it. Litt turned on her heel, her red dress sweeping like a gust, Aiden hurrying after her, the kitchen door closing with a sharp click. The team exhaled, the air released like after a pressure surge. Lena stepped forward, her eyes shining. You achieved it, Marcus, she agreed. Terrence raised a fist, grinning wide. That was epic. I knew you'd succeed. Carl, though silent, gave a slight nod, returning to the oven with renewed focus. Marcus returned to the counter, his eyes scanning each ingredient, his mind racing with the plan to perfect the meal. He directed the kitchen team with clarity and passion, assigning Lena to refine the sauce, Terrence to test sear, and Carl to ensure the oven stayed at the ideal temperature. We're not just cooking, he said, his voice ringing like a vow. We're creating a moment for the diplomats, for America, and for ourselves. The team nodded, diving into their work with explosive energy, each fueled by the belief that they weren't just preparing a dinner, but a victory. In the opulent dining room bathed in the soft golden glow of crystal chandeliers, every sparkling ray seemed a proclamation of extravagance. The long table, draped in white silk, was adorned with purple orchid centerpieces and gleaming silver cutlery. The Japanese and German leaders, in dark suits, conversed with polite smiles, their eyes subtly scanning the room with discreet curiosity. Karoline Leavitt, radiant in her red dress, moved among the guests. Her voice, smooth as velvet, steered conversations with a diplomat's finesse, but beneath her composure, a flicker of unease lingered. Had trusting Marcus Elwood been an error? In the kitchen, the atmosphere crackled like a controlled battlefield. Marcus stood at the center, his gaze sharp, directing the team with absolute precision. Lena Martinez, hands swift, perfected the citrus sauce for the scallops, its bright aroma bursting like a symphony. Terrence Brooks, with unrelenting enthusiasm, seared Wagyu slices, the melting fat sizzling like music. Carl, at the oven, checked each tray with an artisan's care, his eyes now brimming with belief. As the first tray of scallops left the kitchen, Marcus inspected every plate, ensuring each piece was golden, flecked with shimmering citrus zest. "Perfect," he whispered, handing the tray to a server. In the dining room, guests received the scallop plates with curious eyes. A Japanese diplomat cautiously tasted the first bite, his eyes lighting up. "Exquisite," he said in English, his voice tinged with surprise. The crisp crust, the natural sweetness, and that subtle tang, so refined. His German counterpart nodded, taking another bite, his smile widening. "This is an outstanding opener. I've never experienced anything comparable." Leavitt, standing nearby, overheard the praise, her heart easing a beat, though her face remained composed, her eyes flicking toward the kitchen door. The main course, Wagyu beef, arrived. Each slice was thinly cut, nestled in glossy red wine sauce, garnished with a fresh rosemary sprig. Its rich aroma wafted halting conversations as guests' eyes locked onto their plates. The German leader, after his first bite, set his fork down, looking at Leavitt with admiration. "The meat dissolves in your mouth like it was raised by sorcery. I need to know where this ranch exists." The Japanese diplomat nodded, his voice full of awe. "This isn't just food. It's a narrative. I hear it's from Montana. Sustainable and natural. Truly impressive." Leavitt smiled for the first time that night, victory flooding her chest. In the kitchen, feedback reached the team via a server. Terrence whooped, raising a fist. "They adore the scallops, and the Wagyu too." Lena beamed, hugging Marcus. "You did it, Marcus. They're raving about the food." Carl, for the first time, cracked a genuine smile, clapping Marcus's shoulder. "I was wrong, kid. You were correct to stick to your principles." Marcus nodded, his eyes shining, yet he stayed calm. "This is the team's achievement. We accomplished it because we believed in what we execute." Leavitt, during a lull as guests savored dessert, quietly slipped from the dining room into the kitchen. The team froze, eyes turning to her, awaiting judgment. She stopped before Marcus, her gaze no longer icy but carrying a rare warmth. "Marcus," she said, her voice low but sincere, "I doubted you. But those dishes exceeded expectations. The guests aren't just satisfied, they're enchanted. You achieved what I didn't think possible." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the team. "All of you, I owe you gratitude." Marcus bowed his head slightly, his eyes full of respect. "Thank you, Ms. Leavitt. I just wanted to prove we could create something exceptional without losing our values." Leavitt nodded, her lips curving faintly. "I learned that from you. From now on, I'll listen to the kitchen more." She turned to Lena, Terrence, and Carl, her voice softening. "Your assets to the White House. Keep it up." Then she turned on her heel, departing the kitchen, leaving behind an air of relief and pride. The kitchen erupted in celebration. Terrence jumped up, shouting, "We're champions!" Lena laughed loudly, embracing Terrence, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Carl, still stern, raised a glass of lemonade, winking at Marcus. "Not bad, Elwood." Marcus stood in the kitchen, his gaze sweeping over each person, his heart brimming with fulfillment. He thought of Vermont, his grandfather, the days he chose the harder path for his beliefs. Tonight those beliefs had triumphed. As the kitchen quieted, Marcus stepped to the counter, lightly touching a remaining scallop tray. He pictured the diplomat's praise, not just for the food, but for the story behind it about an America balancing luxury with responsibility. Lena approached, her voice soft. "Are you proud, Marcus?" He smiled, his eyes blazing. "Proud of us, Lena. We made history our way." The dinner concluded, the Japanese and German diplomats departing with satisfied smiles, carrying memories of dishes that surpassed expectations. Marcus Elwood stood alone by the prep table, his hand grazing a leftover scallop, his gaze drifting somewhere far, perhaps to Vermont's fields where he learned every choice carries deep meaning. Lena Martinez, her light footsteps breaking the silence, approached with her hair loose after a prolonged day, her eyes shining with joy. "We succeeded, Marcus," Lena said, her voice gentle but brimming with pride. "Not just to please them, but we got them talking about us. Did you hear the Japanese leader? He wants to invite you to Tokyo." Marcus smiled, his eyes warm. "That's not just my victory, Lena. The whole team. You, Terrence, Carl. We made the impossible reality.